Today will be lesson 17 in the instructional videos for Master Kuo Lien Ying's original Guang Ping Taiji form. And today we're going to work on the moves called diagonal whip and parting of the wild horse's mane. Parting of the wild horse's mane was one of Shifu's favorite moves. And in his studio at Portsmouth Square, he had a photo of him in the pose of parting of the wild horse's mane, so you could tell that was one of his favorite moves. So we're going to go into that. I did do a video in the past talking about the function and application of parting of the wild horse's mane, and you can refer to that. But today's lesson, being for more beginners wanting to learn the form, we're to go more into the foundation and movement. So as always, we'll do a review of where we are leading up to this point in the lesson, and then I'll include the movements that were learned in this lesson, and then we'll go from there. One of the things that you're going to have to work out, and again, I think when I get to the end of this section, I'll go have a chart and kind of be more specific about the particular direction that you'll be in the form. As we get further into the form, again, I call this section the diagonal section because most of the movements are done on the X of the square box form, rather than in the beginning. A lot of movements go from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock and 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. But in this section, they're going kind of on the diagonal line. And I think that especially as we got into the last movements with chop opponent with fist and turning on the diagonal, it might have gotten a little confusing. So what I'll do is I'll draw a line on the ground here so that you can see the direction a little bit better. And also, since in the presentation of doing the movement in the direction if I start facing towards the camera, some of the movements my back will be facing to you. Again, as in the other presentations, I'll face towards the camera to show clarification of the movement. So that's how we're going to proceed. So I'm going to draw a diagonal line on the ground. Again, ideally, if you're working in a square format, then that diagonal line will be basically like a 45-degree. But if you're working in a more narrow space, then you're going to alter that diagonal line to be more linear. So the diagonal line is not a fixed degree, but for the purpose of this particular lesson, I'm going to draw the line close to a little bit less than 45 degrees. So this line here will represent the diagonal. And what I want you to notice is that we're going to start from the turn after finger block up with punch into the turn, and then the double jumping scissors kick, and then all the series that we just learned recently. And you'll notice that on this line that I'm going to perform the movement when we do the chop opponent with fist and then diagonal whip. Going back with parting of the wild horse's mane will be actually on the same diagonal line. So you're going to follow that line this direction, do the turn around, and then come back again. So we'll start from wind blowing lotus leaf, finger block up with punch, and then turn. So I'm going to do jumping kick on this diagonal line. And end up with parry punch pretty much on this line. Step back, and then do left kick, turn, kick with sole, and end up carry and punch pretty much in the same place and on the same line. And then block back, apparent close up, carry tiger to mountain, step up, chop opponent with fist, and then diagonal whip. Goes 90 degrees across this line. And then parting of the wild horse's mane. And then diagonal whip on the line. So diagonal whip is very similar to single whip, but we shouldn't get them confused because they're not the same. I did a video presentation, previous video presentation on the 3 moves: diagonal whip, slow palm, stunting flying, and wind blowing this lotus leaf, to show how diagonal whip is a sweep over the knee. And I did a video presentation on single whip as Pung. Pung as in pushing hands and sinking and explosive power. So we'll just kind of briefly talk about that. I'm going to do single whip here to demonstrate the movement of single whip. The posture for diagonal whip and single whip are the same. The horse is the same, and the body position is pretty close, the same. But in single whip, the elbow stays low and the hand stays in line, like that, because it's pressing, pushing force forward, like that. In diagonal whip, as you step out, the elbow starts out higher, not low like this, because you're doing body rotation for the sweep, and that's where you gain the power from the body rotation coming across, sweeping the opponent over this knee. So whereas single whip is a linear force going forward, diagonal whip is more of a horizontal force going over, and you can see the rotation of the body is a little bit different. And so a lot of practitioners get confused because diagonal whip and single whip look very similar, and they tend to practice the diagonal whip as if they were doing a single whip. So in teaching this, I want to make it very clear. So we'll just kind of do it in this direction again, because that's how you learn single whip. In single whip, stepping out in a horse, and the elbow is low, pressing forward. In diagonal whip, elbow stays high as you go from into transition to diagonal whip. You step forward, and the hand and arm go out horizontally, and you're turning from the waist. But then you end up in the same position, like that, just as in single whip. So on this line here, after chop opponent with fist, you're going to do the same transition as you would in single whip. So this foot goes straight on the line, and then arm goes out. And the presentation is similar to single whip, except that the elbow is high. So again, facing the camera so that you can see better. After pressing in chop opponent with fist, you're going to pivot that foot on the straight diagonal line. Then the transition looks like single whip, but elbow is high. And as you step out into the horse and move your arm out horizontally, There's a more of a turn of the waist. And when you get to here, then you finish again in the like the single whip position. So that's the main difference between single whip and diagonal whip, and especially you should go and look at those two videos to understand the difference in the function as well. So again, from where we end chop opponent with this into the press, you step across the diagonal line and do diagonal whip. And then we're going to have a diagonal whip at the end of parting of the wild horse mane. And the diagonal whip is going to be the same, except that after ending the parting of the wild horse mane on the right leg with the right elbow up, you turn onto this line. So again, you have that same transitional pose, and then you're going to step out in the horse right on the line and do your diagonal whip on the line. So the first diagonal whip is 90 degrees across the line. And then after you do your parting of the wild horse's mane, you're going to turn, pivot, and do diagonal whip on the diagonal line, straight. So this diagonal whip is 90 degrees difference of the first diagonal whip. So I think for this lesson, since you already know single whip, diagonal whip won't be that difficult, only understanding that difference between diagonal whip and single whip. But parting a wild horse's mane is a very new move. So in order to learn parting a horse's mane, I want to show you just the arm movement so you can understand the movement. So one arm is shoulder level and horizontal across from the forearm, making a fist. The fist is about even with your left chest if you're on the right side. On this side, arm will be about even with the chest. Not as far over to the shoulder, but straight. So about the center of the forearm to the center of your body. Think of that. And the movement is upward, as if you're blocking or striking, like a upward rotation. Also, it's rotating kind of up, and the body is creating force by that upward projection. So not out like this. The right hand is circling and coming in as if it was like a low punch. Again, in that presentation on what Sifu showed me about parting in a wild horse's mane, that was an important detail in that the right hand making the fist and the left arm or the right arm coming up, both are potential weapons. Right arm coming up as a block or a strike, and the left punching low. So in order to create the force for that punch, there's body rotation for the projection of that power. So in this exercise I'm going to show you where you're just doing the arm movement, you're going to practice that motion, and both should finish at the same time. So you want to kind of feel how to project the power both on the upward strike and the incoming low strike at the same time. So one of the important things is creating the circle of that receding fist, which helps the body torque for the upper strike as well. The timing is everything so that you're finishing both at the same time for the power projection. So just doing this basic exercise will really help you. And then you have to work the footwork in to the timing of this movement. So the circling, then coming up with the fist. So in the fist, the arm coming across, the fist is facing up at this point. It's not facing down and just coming up like this, but that rotation is part of the power circuit. So it's important to have that rotation coming up. And then as I'm sweeping this arm back, this arm is coming in like this, with the fist coming up, so that as I finish, it has that torquing turn. So it's important to develop those torquing motions. I hope that kind of makes it a little bit more clear. By practicing just the arm movement over and over, and the waist rotation, so again, it's not just like that, but there's a whole universe in this torquing motion that goes along with the footwork. So I advise you do this preliminary arm exercise until it feels comfortable, and you can feel that. In the receding hand, you want to have that circle for the power of the punch, okay? So it isn't like coming back forward. It's always circling into the punch, like Korean punch is circling into the punch for the power going forward. So again, it's funny, you can't really think too hard about the movements. You have to kind of practice it over and develop the feel. If you think too hard about it, it's like trying to think about your feet as you're running down the stairs. So in order to teach it, I have to kind of break it down, but after a while it becomes so instinctive that you're not really having to think about it too much. Okay, so let's go back to diagonal whip, and then we'll get into working on parting of the wild horse's mane with the footwork. So again, diagonal whip will be across the line. And again, because I'm going to be facing my back away from you, first I have to do it on the direction so you can see in the form what it looks like. So again, you're going to circle, and just about when you get to ready to come up, you're going to like step forward. So from diagonal whip, here, it's the first one, like that. And then you're going to circle your arms in, and then step with the right, and follow with the left onto the toe. So I'm going to face this direction so you can see it better. Parting of the wild horse mane is one of those movements where there's no set amount of how many you do. But given the space that you're doing and where you end up, like in this small space, I only had room for two. You're always going to do end up on the even, because you start off on the left. When you come to the pose, you're going to be doing the left side, and then the right side, and then the turn into the diagonal whip. So in this space, I only have room for two, but if you had a bigger space, you could do 4 or 6. So from, let's see, let me do it here. I'll kind of face diagonal this way on the diagonal. We're doing diagonal whip on cross on this line here. Diagonal whip is going to be here. So in the first posture, you come to the ending posture first. So from diagonal whip, you come to the ending posture, which would, in this case, would be the right arm across, about even with the chest, even with the center, and then the left fist facing forward by your hip. And it's a very erect posture, standing straight up. Now you're going to circle like we did in just the arm exercise. And then from here, when you get to the arm even with the shoulder, is when you're going to take a step with the left foot. And in the stepping, you're going to step and then finish on the toe. Step, finish on the toe. So that's the stepping portion. From diagonal whip, come up to the erect finish posture, then start your circling with your arms, and then right about when the fist gets to about the shoulder, you're going to step forward with the left foot, finish the circle to the hip with the right fist, and coming up with the left elbow. And then for the next one, again, you're going to start the circle. And when this gets to about the shoulder, remember to turn this fist up here. And as you step to the right, you're going to finish again the movement with the torque. Circle, torque. That. Circle, there. It can be a little bit difficult to get the coordination of the circling of the arms and the body torque and the step. But if you keep practicing it, you'll find that moment of like what we like to call pre-power, where you can kind of feel here, right here, right here. So the step and the arms have to finish at that same time. So again, from diagonal whip, and then the high posture, which is the ending posture, then the circling, and then the step. The circling, step, circle, step. And then we have to end one more on the right side because it has to be even 4. Step 4. And from here, we're going to pivot into the transitional, again, elbow high on the diagonal whip, step in the horse on the line, do your arm movement out horizontal, torque from the waist, and end in diagonal whip. Now we're about 180 degrees from the direction that would be here to go into Fair Lady Works at Shuttles. But we'll do that in the next lesson. So that would be the lesson for today. Again, I advise you to do just the arm movement so that you can understand what I'm talking about in the torquing force. And then when you get to doing it with the footwork, all you have to do is bring in the timing of the footwork to enhance that torque. A note for more advanced practitioners is that in that footwork here, knowing as an advanced practitioner, knowing when you can change that footwork to enhance the torque yet to create the space that you need for the movement is important in kind of your progression of understanding. And so knowing when you weight your foot or when you can lift your foot for a movement is part of the progression. So in that video where I had to do the Guang Ping Taiji form in a small space, understanding when you can change that movement so that you can almost do it in space or doing the form in a small space is all part of that higher understanding as you progress in that understanding that footwork related to this basic lesson that I've been teaching you, when to unweight that foot, when to move that foot back is all part of that. So I hope that little tip gives advanced practitioners something else to work with. Okay, thank you for watching. I wanted to add this little addendum at the end. In doing video presentations online, again, we're always working with trying to teach the basic form as Master Kuo Lien Ying taught it in Portsmouth Square, and also enhance advanced practitioners who've been doing it for a while with my own discovery and knowledge. And I'm trying to be careful not to interject my own style into teaching what I want to preserve as Sifu's legacy. And it's always a kind of a conflict of the two things that I'm working with in doing these presentations. Um, the understanding as you grow is kind of the way that you express your own individuality of the form. And Sifu himself didn't uh, have a specific manner to teach other than the basic blocky style. And then a lot of this is discovered as you do it for over, I don't know, decades of practice. And so I kind of interject my own understanding a lot of times. So in this addendum, I want to kind of show you that the basic movement in the parting of the wild horse mane was mainly like this. And the upper projection of the upper forearm was the main emphasis at Portsmouth Square until the day that Sifu showed me the circular punch coming up from underneath. But it was not something that he emphasized. It was something that he just showed to me for me to think about more possibilities of that movement. And that's how Sifu taught. And again, he didn't go into the particulars of it. He just demonstrated on me, and from my own understanding, that clicked into me to understand the function of the fifth hand rather than as much as the elbow hand. But you see that many practitioners do parting the wild horse's mane after a diagonal whip, and it looks basically like this. And I want to say that that's fine. That's okay. And if doing it that way helps you to learn the form, if you're just a beginner, having a simpler method to do it so that you can just kind of do the basic blocky move, I think that that's fine. But in teaching, I found that many people that learn by rote, once they learn a particular way to do it, then they find it very hard to learn. Other people can start off with just this primary motion, and then later on, they can add that torque as they gain their understanding. Other people that learn by rote, once they learn this, then they find it hard to change their understanding into more conceptual learning. And that's the difficulty of teaching online. So again, in this addendum, I just want to teach you that it's okay to just basically come up with the elbow and step forward with the toe. But if you're understand the concept of torque and power, then that whole methodology that I taught in the lesson becomes more valuable. So there's always a simplistic way to do it, and you're still doing the form for exercise, then that's great. And then there's a higher conceptual understanding. And again, this is what I'm trying to present in the video presentation, to preserve Sifu's legacy, but also to give more advanced practitioners a more higher conceptual understanding of what they're doing. So thank you.